with the Sanguine Quaking Tyrannical as usual, as we see akin to the most quarterfinals here. So Sanguine, of course, being those pools that we want to move monsters out of, that they lay down when they die, doing a ton of damage to players and healing mobs in them. And then, of course, Quaking, that pulse every 20-25 seconds, that chunks about 20% of your max HP off players, so you want to spread out for that.
Very big pull here by friend of the Affixes, and you're seeing, look at those healing meters here. You're having Feral Dog just absolutely chunking out huge amounts of healing. He's getting jumped on by those felines. They're trying to get him out of the Sanguine as fast as they possibly can. And you're really seeing just the struggle there of making sure that you're keeping everybody topped off, keeping people in an as comfortable a position as possible here as they, staying mobile, watching out for any of the quaking that's going out, and doing a really, really good job of just moving with those mobs and making sure they're getting out of the Sanguine and also moving into a more favorable position to get the next trash pack pulled.
Yeah, both teams with a similar pull. Dampeners is just a bit slower, still dealing with that first bear. Meanwhile, Friends with Affixes has already moved on to the Hippogriff pack. Of course, we did have that patrol of the 2 Ruiners still there. Those do have to be interrupted as much as they can. The Despair is not too dangerous of a cast, but Jason Brew's getting so low. It's not too dangerous of a cast. It's the Starstorm that we want to make sure that we interrupt the Star Shower.
You're seeing Key Dampeners, they already had a couple deaths there, as they had a much sloppier pull than Friends with Affixes here. And, they're taking a little bit more time here, and they're running a lot of their mobs and stuff like that over the Sanguine that are going here, with Friends with Affixes just pouring on through.
So it looks like they actually have Key Dampeners actually Protection Paladin by the looks of it. I guess that was just an incorrect tag earlier. So it is the Protection Paladin that we're running. Still, not as, of course, common as the Blood Death Knight and the Guardian Druid that we're used to seeing. They're playing a bit of a dangerous game with that bear, as we saw earlier, kind of kiting it down the path. It does have a frontal cleave, and it did clip some of those players, so they have to be careful to make sure they move out of the way if the tank is indeed running through.
Yeah, what do you think that some of the big reasons for running with the Prop Alley? I think we've only seen Prop Alley once or twice so far in the tournament.
Well, I think some of the scare on this map, of course, is Tyrannical. Shade of Xavius, commonly known to do his one-shot with the Nightmare Bolt. And you can kind of negate some of those, help out with the sack, help out with the Blessing of Spell Warding. So I think there's a bit of support that they're looking for there. And Prop Paladins now can get some nice damage off these days.
Good to know. And Friends with Affixes is just pouring on through. I mean, you're really seeing, the Feral Dog doing a really, really good job of just making sure that people are staying topped off enough. I mean, they've gone through so many, all these burst trash packs, with no deaths so far. And it's really, really a nice thing to see of how well their healer is able to just kind of balance out their priority of keeping people topped off, and really able to prioritize well the healing. You have a big pull here by Key Dampeners. And
he's getting so low.
He's getting very, very low. The Rogue's dropping down too. He just practiced Cheat Death here. Oh my gosh,
they have so many of those poisons going out from the spiders that they need to dispel or make sure that they move out of the group with, because it's a ton of damage. Even in a non-fortified setting, they're struggling on top of, Jag. I mean, you're no stranger to it. On top of a Quaking, one of those poison explosions goes off. It could easily, seal the fate of a player. And now, of course, we're going to see soon enough Friends with Affixes. They're not going to be able to skip this bear pack unless they invis-pot, and I really doubt they're going to invis-pot this early.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what's going on here, and I guess they're looking to have their Hunter just running away, distract everybody as they pour on through, and then let the Hunter feign death everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they pulled it off, no problem. No deaths in the meantime. Well, Brewmaster's quite low, and they'll heal him up prior to the boss. And now they're getting ready to pull, of course, the first boss, Glade Dallas, which, he does jump the furthest target, making sure that they get a grievous wound, which doesn't need to be healed above 90%, so you can kind of control who gets that bait out. Wouldn't be surprised to see likely the Resto Druid doing it, because they can go into bear form, and of course after every 2 leaps he does transform in the bear form that we just saw on the bottom right of the screen there, now on the main screen, where he does do a huge frontal, punting anyone in front, and then charges that main aggro target, so you want to make sure you're out of the way. I really like what they're doing here, Jack, because if you keep him on the wall like this, when he does go bear form, if he charges into a wall that's already in front of him with no space, he actually immediately stops his bear form and does not get the charge off and damage the tank.
You're seeing a really good job here by Feral Dog, just jumping into bear form before every single leap to him. He's barely taking any kind of damage. He's just staying in control of everything, And this is what you want to be able to do, is as a healer, you want to make sure that the damage is coming to you on your terms. You know when it's going to be hitting you. You see it again, Feral Dog he's not taking any chances. He's moving into bear form early enough to make sure that it gets done. He's had, not that much damage or anything like that, but the important thing is making sure you're keeping people sustained, you're keeping people topped off, and really, he's doing an excellent job here.
Of course, these nightmare aberrations that the boss summons are not too inherently dangerous themselves. However, they do lay down that nightmare pool on the ground that does a ton of damage, ticks every half second for tons of damage. So players do want to make sure they kill them, CC them, move them out of the way, as to not limit too much space that they're having. And I would like to see the tank kind of moving him off the wall before those ads spawn and then going back to wall, because they're kind of, cornering themselves here a bit, and the boss still does have a fair bit of health to go for Friends.
Yeah, you're seeing Key Dampeners here, they're kind of struggling there. That people are dropping pretty low, but they were able to can get themselves top back off and stuff like that. It was looking a little bit scary when the cat for key dampeners had leaped to the wrong target. So here you're seeing, you know, their druid again is going into bear form. It's very, very standard, and it's a super, super safe setup that they have here. And overall, I mean, they're doing a very good job. You're seeing, you know, basically identical NA strats at work.
And the damage meters are pretty even too across the tanks and the DPS, and even the 2 healers. Were you expected to see a bigger output between, like, is there a time on this fight really for these Rusted Druids to get some damage off?
I think it's always kind of in between. You know, you're having the situation where you have to be prepared for when you need to be topping yourself off, getting rid of the grievous wound that's available to you. They have to take extra time to switch into bear form, make sure that they're taking much less damage, and of course, you know, any kind of little extra damage that people will take from standing in any of the nightmares, or you know, just the tank a little bit extra damage here and there.
So we're pulling now. Of course, Friends has finished off the boss. We're moving on to the first pack after, which consists usually of 1 Dryad and 2 Blossoms. Nothing too dangerous here. The Dryad is a bit annoying. She will kind of run away from the tank and start throwing spears randomly. It's always nice to have a bit of a CC on her prior to doing that, or of course a grip that neither team has the luxury of at the moment. Once they down this pack, I do expect that they will skip the next pack on the side with that 1 keeper by rooting the patrolling Dryad and then running over to the right.
It'll be interesting to see how they're going to be handling as they're going down the hill, going towards any of the eyeball mobs before the second boss there, because we've seen a couple different strategies of where, you know, tanks have sacrificed themselves. I mean, we saw earlier where the hunter had just distracted the bears, ran off and just feigned death to be able to get rid of them. You know, it'll be interesting to see how they're going to be skipping mobs there, and I mean, again, when they're talking about having no rogue, how they're proportioning their mobs. I mean, Friends of Affixes looks so solid right here. I mean, they're getting another big pull, which is pretty standard. We've seen a lot of. So I'm very interested in seeing how they're going to, you know, portion out the rest of this.
They're going to have to be careful here, though, because with all these flowers pulled, I mean, that's not a problem, but not too far from here is that pack of 2 keepers. And those keepers have an aura that do heal Blossoms nearby for 5% of their health, I believe, every second. So it's going to be near impossible to kill these if they get too close. But on top of it all, Sanguine's going to start dropping too. So they need to really intelligently move in the small space they have to make sure that they don't accidentally pull the pack they skipped or get too close to the next keeper pack that will start healing these Blossoms, or of course sit in the Sanguine and heal these mobs themselves.
You're seeing Friends of Affix is doing a really good job. I mean, one concern is with the Dryad of how much it'll just want to move around and not really want to stay in an expected range. So I mean, they did a very good job keeping it in the house, keeping it in the doorway, stuff like that, as they took care of everything else. And here you're seeing, you know, Friends of Affix is doing the skip, and they're actually invis-potting. Looks like just to get through all the other mobs here.
It does look like it, because they did use their Shroud earlier for the 2 rares upstairs, so they will incur that 10-minute CD. No pots for 10 minutes now, but because they used the Shroud early, they will likely be able to skip the pack prior to Shade of Xavius. When we get there, we'll see. So they are dealing with this this 1 patrol up and down the hill there, and of course moving on to pull these 5 dwellers that you alluded to earlier that are quite dangerous. Now, it's not a fortified setting, but they do have a lot of casts that do need to be interrupted, because if a full channel does go off, it will fear their target.
You're seeing Friends of Affixes, you know, they're having this larger pull here, and overall, I mean, they're doing a very, very good job keeping everything in control. You're seeing, you know, the Brewmaster's getting the stun out on everybody as the Blossoms are coming down the hill, and, you know, you're only having a couple limited casts going off, so you're able to Typhoon, you're able to knock them back, get them out of the Sanguine. So, you know, by the time the Blossoms actually made it all the way down the hill, all the other dwellers were just gone.
Uh-oh. Looks like we're having a bit of trouble here with key dampeners. They kind of tried to do a skip where, you know, they killed the guys that couldn't stealth. They killed them off ready to res, but the mobs just stayed in combat for so long. Finally, they do manage to kill off who needs to be killed. They're doing the res past the keeper pack, of course, a much sloppier version of being able to, rather than just, you know, pot through. It will cost them 25 seconds in deaths overall. Although they did have 2 earlier, so +3. We now have extra 25 seconds with their 5 deaths. Might cost them towards the end of the dungeon, so I hope that keeping that pot CD was worth it to them.
I mean, you're really going to have to hope that it would be. I mean, we haven't really seen that many teams that have used invis pots and things like that. So you're seeing the Friends of Affixes, they're just running so smoothly, though. No deaths. I mean, they're engaging with Darkheart. They're getting it, you know, they're just moving so quickly, so rapidly through this instance. Yeah,
so Darkheart, of course, being a nice guy, you can share a root beer with him once in a while. Speaking particularly about the boss, especially on Tyrannical, quite dangerous to the tank, does a lot of damage. About every 30 seconds, we're going to have that grip on the tank that does a ton of magic damage. There it is right now. You see it on Jason Bruce. Requires a ton of healing on the tank. You see him dipping so low. Make sure that he doesn't die there. Gets him down. And of course, particular danger also for the healer, Jack, is that AoE stomp, especially when combined with a quaking.
Yeah, and it really takes up the time of being able to add any kind of extra damage, because you want to make sure that you're getting people in as safe a position as possible. So, you know, if you're getting a bunch of rehots and stuff like that out, to make sure that second this stomp comes out, you're able to quickly reverse that damage. Everyone's getting healing. Everyone's getting topped off as rapidly as possible. And it's something you always have to kind of break up, where you want to be doing a lot of damage as a healer. You want to be able to contribute to the group here, but you also want to make sure you're prepared for everything. I mean, you're seeing Jason taking tons and tons of damage here from that grip. So it's something where, you know, having that extra preparation and, you know, not people always talk about healers being reactionary or proactive. proactive and things like that, but all healing should be proactive. And you're really seeing, Feral Dog putting on a clinic here, making sure that he's prepared for any of the damage happening. If somebody drops low, they're instantly getting topped off, and he really is, putting on a good show.
So a bit of a clip there, of course, on the Hunter Vim with the frontal. He does have a frontal breath that you want to make sure you point away once every 30 seconds as well. Everyone getting so low from that Stomp luckily. There is no overlapping quaking, and they're really not opting to clear the roots at all. It is a bit tougher for them, of course. They don't have a Paladin, an advantage that Key Dampeners will have in the bottom right corner. They're able to free them and run through those roots to make sure that you're able to then AoE and cleave them down.
And you're seeing here, as Key Dampeners is getting onto the boss here, they're trying to burn it down as quickly as they possibly can. Both teams running with similar healers here, so a lot of the same rules are kind of just apply of what they are able to do. And, it'll be interesting to see, like you're talking about, how they're going to be dealing with the roots and stuff like that for Key Dampeners, because you're seeing Friends of Affixes just ignoring them, keep on kiting the boss back, and not even really having to worry about it at all.
Yeah, once again, the damage meters are about even. We're getting a bit less damage from Key Dampeners right now, especially from the tank. And they were behind getting to the boss too, so we're kind of having this consistent. Now it's about 40% on the boss. They were about 1.5, 2 trash packs behind Friends with Affixes, so it could be pretty close. Now, bear in mind that all of this too, they have an extra 5 deaths on top of it. So not only are they behind now, but they have to make up even more time, at least plus 25 seconds, to be able to cap this map at the end.
And you're seeing even though, you're seeing Friends of Affixes taking down Darkheart here, but even though that they don't even have the potion that for the next 10 minutes or so, Key Dampeners really doesn't seem to be making up that time, and you're going to have to see some really aggressive pulls or something like that, something very ambitious for them to be able to catch up here.
So pretty standard here, of course. We're going to see these little gooeys pulled, killed off to the side, dropping their Sanguine, and then I would very much expect that they're going to pull this large red elemental. They're going to kill it on the side and make sure to skip the 4 less elementals that spawns Ferment with this Fury to make sure that they don't have to deal with it. They don't need the percent. It's just a huge time loss to kill them. So definitely, they're already starting to move it to side. They will be stunning it when it's low, I would expect, and then running away from it.
We've seen, very standard execution of this. It's one of the nice things where you're able to see all these groups who are running at the same time. You're able to see how they're strategizing, and also you're seeing that there's not really crazy high variance with how they're going. And it's also, a nice benefit because you're getting these maps that are just all about the execution. How cleanly are you going to be executing on this? How few deaths can you have? And, even it was kind of a surprise because I don't think that we've really seen many invis pots at all, and I keep bringing it up because usually we think of that as being, pretty suboptimal. So, why didn't they bring a rogue and then they'd be able to skip things otherwise? But, it really doesn't seem to be putting any kind of damper on Friends with Affixes at all.
So Friends with Affixes, of course, moving well through past that patrolling second Fury, killing off those little blobs prior to pulling Dresser on the third boss here. Tons of damage coming out on this boss, especially on Tyrannical. 3 main abilities to look out for. Of course, he has that frontal breath on his closest proximity target, actually. If the tank is out of proximity, it will target the next closest aggro. So usually it's on the tank, but you never know if they get blown away by, of course, one of the other abilities, the Winds, that does very heavy damage, and the third ability being that Cave-In that players can bait out. So there's a constant push and pull going on here where you want to get near the boss for the wins, and then, of course, move out to bait the Cave-In.
You're seeing, the knockback coming out right now with Friends of Affixes. You're just having everybody stacked up. And, of course, you want to make sure that everyone's stacked up not only for, taking advantage of their healing, but also, reducing the damage that's going to be going out on people. And they're actually pulling a ton of weapons here. Yep. And the huge burst that's actually knocking down Big Luke. So, they have tons of battle reses that they're able to take advantage of here. They used one of them. Fired Up is also going down, so they have to use their second. They have to use
using all of them.
Yeah.
Slow and steady, which allows Key Dampeners, of course, to catch up even a bit more. They are waiting for that last Fury to patrol, as we did see earlier with Friends with Affixes, and they're now moving to Dressron's room as well, and they're prepared to pull. They're also 7% behind Trash, but I think both teams should have enough percent to be able to skip that last pack prior to Shade. We'll have to see when we get there, but just, a scary situation right now for Friends with Affixes, Jack. There's just like Darkheart, there's so much damage with the pushback from the Winds, and then that Cave-In does so much damage, and then just quaking on top of it too.
It also is a very nice fight for the rest of Druid, having to be able to take advantage of the mobility. One of the biggest struggles here is that you have to be moving and healing so much throughout this. So, whenever you're playing other classes that don't have as many mobile abilities, it can definitely put a huge damper on it, and it really makes it a lot harder to be able to react as quickly when these problems are going out. So, they've got Friends Affixes has 1 more battle res left with their Hunter that they're able to take advantage of. So, it's nice that they were were playing so cleanly before, and we've seen this with other teams as well, where they played really cleanly through trash mobs, through early bosses, and then when they start hitting the really hard bosses, that's where they're able to kind of cash in on those battle reses.
Yeah, so things are definitely closing in between the two teams here. We're having another pushback. Of course, it is, just a tip for those at home. The closer you are to the center of the boss's hitbox, the less you'll get pushed away from wins, even within the red targeting circle, of course. So that's why you're seeing players sit right under the boss. But of course, then, you do have to move out for those cave-ins. Otherwise, if it spawns right under the boss, you will have to move in. He's a bit of a pain in the butt to move because of all the casting he does in the frontal breath.
Yeah, you're seeing, I mean, they had tons of wellpings that they've been pulling throughout this fight, and it's very interesting to see just. I mean, we saw a lot of times where they had rogues who would pull a bunch of different wellpings. They had a lot more single target damage. But I was curious, why if it was just maybe a mistake or something like that of positioning where they're pulling a couple extra mobs here and there that they really didn't need to.
I mean, it's possible. There were a couple of times when I did see both druids caught out of position a bit. I mean, you'd expect that they'd have a dash and maybe a displacer if they're using it to get back in. So perhaps it was intentional. I mean, the druid did kind of run through a bunch of eggs, so I would assume that they had planned for it, but I don't think they planned. I mean, on Tyrannical, these whelps do still do a lot of damage. You can't just pull 10 of them and, it's no problem. I mean, people can't get hit by them, especially if the tank's a bit slow to pull. The keg smash goes out. Maybe it doesn't clip all of them by accident. Of course, there are no professions available to that observer at the moment. But going downstairs now, we are moving over to the final trash leading up to Shade of Xavius. There are 4 pulls here, one of which patrols. The first one we just saw pulled here. It is pretty typical for teams sometimes to pull these next 2 paths together, but it's very hard to pull off without an AoE grip, especially from Blood DK, because you just might not be lucky with their pathing time. As you can see, the other group in the back is just so far away.
Yeah, and there's honestly no points for them at this set in time. I mean, they're so far ahead. They're playing very cleanly. They're only deaths to tyrannical bosses and stuff like that, which is pretty much par for the course that can be pretty much expected here. So there's not really any point to it. We've seen other teams in the past who pulled a lot and were willing to take the risk of losing a player, and often did lose a player, but they were getting ahead time-wise.
Yeah, but there's only 3 deaths differential now, and Xavius, oh god, just getting so long. Key Dampeners, they're kind of wrapping up the last few % of the boss here. Shade of Xavius is just such a dangerous boss with Nightmare Bolt, and then you add the multiplier damage on top of it if he soaks some of those swirlies in the second phase post 50%. So I'll have to keep an eye on that. I mean, any team can just wipe right there. Dresron, of course, will be going down momentarily for Key Dampeners, after which they will also be moving into this log area. At this point, they probably know they're a bit behind, so I wouldn't be shocked to see a bit of a riskier pull downstairs for them.
Oh, they're going to have to here. I mean, otherwise, you're just betting on a wipe on the front of Friends with Affixes, and that really isn't going to be showing here. I mean, I think the person to watch is going to be the Hunter on Xavius. We've seen so many times Hunters just getting absolutely one shot by any of the Nightmare Bolts that are going off.
We have seen that indeed.
So that's one thing. I mean, they have a lot of battle reses. Their battle reses should be coming up by the time that they're on the boss, or pretty deep into the boss here. So they already have one that they definitely have advantage of, and here we're going to be seeing. They already have all the mob count here, so it'd be interesting to see if they're just getting the boss, or getting the tank pulling all the mobs.
Their pot CD's up now? It looks like it is, as they're kind of just running through. Okay, so it just probably came up, so that's a double pot for them there. Key Dampeners, of course, don't have as high % going into this trash pack, so I think they will actually have to deal with the last pack on Xavius. We'll have to see, because they're about 7% behind Friends with Affixes. Big Luke, of course, does not make it through, so they'll have to res him on the other side. That's another 5-second penalty, plus the res time it takes, plus then they will likely have to wait for him to eat.
It kind of looks like Key Dampeners might have just misjudged how much they were going to be pulling if they're not going to make mob count off of this last set of bats and stuff like that. I mean, one of the big benefits of having the road to begin with is making sure that you're able to skip that last big pack.
Yeah, so we'll have to keep an eye on that, but of course Shade of Xavius is pulled over on Friends with Affixes' side. A few main abilities to watch out for, one of the most dangerous being, of course, that Nightmare Bolt that we just saw. Really good to go on a Druid, of course. They could go bare form prior to the hit, and once it hits you, it does silence you, so you can see that little purple circle area there. You need another player, another buddy to stand in the circle with you, otherwise you will be pacified and be unable to cast during it.
And you're seeing the growing paranoia is going out, and so first the Nightmare Bolt goes out on Big Luke, and then the growing paranoia goes out, and that little red zone that is sprouting out of him, of course, will fear Big Luke if he does stand too close to anybody. So, something where you have to be standing very close to somebody, then if you have the Nightmare Bolt going on him, and then you have to make sure that you're spreading out. Right there, you're seeing Feral Dog, who's getting drained by Xavius, the Drain the Weak that was going off. So he's a little bit caught off guard, and then he switches into bear form to make sure he's mitigating the damage a little bit better.
It's quite a lot of damage, that too, and of course the paranoia, as you said, will nuke a player if they go through. So they are actually stealthing past the side. They do have 7% left. Maybe they're planning on dealing with it after the boss, or of course, in rare circumstances, we have seen that sometimes there is a display issue. Hopefully that's not the case. We're to keep an eye on that. They will be pulling Xavius too. Momentarily about 8% now on Friends with Affixes. The Shade of Xavius will do that massive AoE that will damage the group quite heavily. Luckily, they do have a warrior for that commanding shout. It should help kind of buffer some of that damage. But as you know, the healer will very quickly need to heal everybody up to make sure that a Nightmare Bolt, if they have bad RNG, doesn't hit right after on a player that's low.
Yeah, but right here you're seeing, everyone going into bear form, turtles going up, all the defensive cooldowns that are available, tranks up, and having those defenses is just so nice. You really don't want to be taking any kind of unnecessary risks if you don't have to, and this damage is just so heavy. So you saw everyone basically stop doing damage, pop whatever the defensive that they had, if it was going to keep them from the rotation. So they took no risks there, and then the other thing to worry about after that point is just the drain the weaks and the Nightmare Bolts. And you're seeing Feral doing a really good job of making sure that he's going into bear form, he's having the proper healing set up ready for it. And it's a very good show.
Yep, and Shade here, of course, is kept on the side. It kind of minimizes the chance that some of those swirlies drop on him. If they do buff him and, of course, damage any player in the area. But so far, they've had pretty good luck making sure none of them even spawn near him. Sometimes it is a bit of a pain in the butt to move him. You can't always get him out of those swirlies, as he does cast a lot, as we're seeing here. And I do see, of course, some of the players probably gearing more defensively, too. Wouldn't be shocked. It looks like there's probably 2 Pridus on Feral Dog and 1 on Vim. Wouldn't be shocked, again, also to see some Stam Flasks. I mean, this boss can just turn things around really quickly, so you just want to make sure.
And one thing that we've seen through Xavius all the time is that, there's so many times where these deaths just make all the difference. I mean, we even saw, with one game coming down to a fraction of a second, where, these little deaths here and there really make a huge difference. So it's something that you have to be very careful of, and losing a little bit of damage just to be taking advantage of Pride is so worth it on a fight like this.
Yeah, and I mean, Friends with Affixes looks like they're just going to get the kill here. It should be their first win easily, and we're up 1-0 now for Friends with Affixes after that Darkheart Thicket.
Friends with Affixes executing very well there. I mean, we saw some matches yesterday where, it felt like there was a clear reason why one team maybe lost to the other, but this one, this was fairly close. Unfortunately, Dampeners did take a couple deaths that definitely seemed largely didn't have to happen. But otherwise, just looking at the damage meters over on my side, shout out, by the way, to Details for the sweet damage and now healing meters we have, Jack, in honor of your return. Thank you for allowing us to use that. We saw over